Right, so let's imagine that we want to perform some calculations using a two-dimensional array. Let's imagine that the values inside this two-dimensional array are grades for students. And let's imagine that we want to, each row represents a different student's grades, and we want to know the average of each student. Now, if that's the case, it means that we need to go across, and by the time we reach the end of each line, we need to essentially find the average. Let's imagine that we will be storing the average into a separate array. Let's imagine that we have another array that will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 indexes long. So here we go, like so. So here will be student 1 grades and so forth and so forth. So student 2, student 3, student 4, and student 5, like so. Okay, so remember, each row is a different student. So row 1 is student 1, row 2 is student 2, and so forth and so forth. Okay, so as we know, when we're dealing with two-dimensional arrays, we need to use two loops, two for loops, one nested in the other. Now, since we're going horizontally, it means that we need one for loop for, we'll call it row 1 to 5, okay? And we need another one for the columns. So for column 1 to 4, you know what? We'll call them for C and for R just to make it shorter. Now, in your examination, do not do this. Make sure all of your names are meaningful. R and C are not meaningful names. But for the sake of the example, we'll continue on like this. Now, before we get started in how to find the sum, we'll call this, we'll imagine that this array is called grades, and we'll imagine that this array is called averages. Okay? Now, in order to find the average, we need a sum variable. Okay, so before we start, we'll call sum, and we'll say that sum is 0. And in our inner loop, here we'll say that sum is sum plus whatever the current value of the array is. So our array is called grades at position R, comma, C. Now, if we're not sure, all we have to do is cycle through this, okay, and see if it makes sense. So the first time this will run, grades RC will be 1, 1. The second time that this will run, the row will remain 1 since it's in the outer loop, and the column will become 2. So this will become 1, 2. So it means we're looking at this. Okay, perfect. Now, the average shouldn't be calculated inside the nested loop. If I do this, divided by 4, it means that every time a number is inserted, I'll be performing this calculation. This calculation should be performed after we've reached the end of the first row. So this calculation should be positioned here. Okay? Now, there's one tiny issue. The sum that I put outside of my loop should actually be in the first loop. And so should the average. So the average should be initialized inside the first loop. This means that every time this loop will run, or in other words, every time we reach a new line, both the sum and the average will be reset. Okay? Now, once we have the average, okay, all we need to do is to assign the average to our average array. So average array at position R, okay, is equal to AVG, which is our variable that contains the average. So essentially what's going to happen? The first row is, let's draw a little text box and follow and see. So we've got sum which is 0. We've got average, which is 0. We've got, yeah, that's it. Okay. All right. So when this program starts, okay, let's put some iconic numbers. Let's say that this is 10 and this is position 1, 1. This is 10 again and this is position 1, 2. This is 10 again and this is position 1, 3. And as you imagine, this is 10 and that's position 1, 4. And we'll do the same for the bottom row. So let's say this is 20. This is 20 again. Whoops. Like so. 20 and 20. Okay, we're not going to do every single one just to get the point. So when this starts, oh, we forgot to put R, whoops, R and C, okay, and we'll put little equal sign like so. Okay, so when this starts, row will be equal to 1 and C, and the moment that this line executes, sum will become 0 and average will become 0. And then the second for loop will run and C will become 1. Now, sum is 0 plus grades at position RC. Position RC, so I'll put here R comma C, okay, in this situation is equal to 1 comma 1, okay? So position RC means that we're looking at this box here, okay? So the sum will be 0 plus 10, which makes 10, okay? Now this will loop all the way to the top. The C will become 2, okay? And now, okay, the sum will become whatever the sum was before, so it's 10 plus whatever's in the grades array at position RC. Position RC now is no longer 1, 1, it's 1, comma 2. So we are currently looking at a different box. We're looking at this box. Okay, so it's 10 plus 10. Sum will become 20 in this situation. Like so. Perfect. Okay, next C will come and 4 will become, for C is 3 now. So this will become 3. This will become scratched out. And then sum will become 20 plus whatever's in the grades array at positions RC. RC now is 1, comma 3. So this will get scratched out. Okay, and we're looking at 1.3, which is this one. So the sum will become 30, like so. Okay, this will cycle again. Our C will become 4 this time. Here we go. Okay, and the sum will become 30 plus grades at position RC. Position RC is 1, comma 4. Okay, so here it is. There we go. And position 1.4 contains this value here. Awesome. Now, next C will mean that this for loop is finished because it goes up to 4. And the average will become sum, which is, we forgot to write it, 40. There we go. Divided by 4. So the average will become 4. Okay, so scratch this one out. Perfect. And now the average array at position R, okay, which is currently 1, so we're looking at this box here, okay, will become 4. So inside here, the number 4 will be written. Now next R will come around and R will become 2. So this will become 2, scratch out the 1, okay, and sum will become 0 because we're starting fresh now for another student. We're at the second row now, or we'll be looking at the second row. So here we go, 0. Okay, let's unscratch that out. Okay, and then for C, 1 to 4. So C will become 1 again. Okay, here we go. Let's remove that. Okay. Sum is 0 plus whatever's in grades at position RC, which is 2, 1, which means it's this one. Okay, this will cycle through every single box and then every single row until it adds up and calculates the average and stores it in each of these boxes here. Okay, hope this one was helpful. Catch you in the next one.